You can see it now, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so the example is that they click on the word, and if it's incorrect, it tells you it's incorrect, and if it's correct currently, it just spits out the word. Further examples of that would be where, for example, if I click on the wrong one, it tells me to try again.
How do I get the explanation?
If you go to Moodle, it'll be at the top of the page for level 2. And the third one, which is a variation of this, which is just basically clicking through slides. So 1, 2, 3, on stage. So an amalgamation of those kind of things, really. So I'll work in a slightly bigger screen size. Okay. So the idea is that we're going to have an image on screen, a couple of scenes. This is the way that I want you to work with your kind of examples, is to work in scenes, which is something that might still be new to you. But in Window, you'll see the word other panels and then scene, which is one that I usually pin to next to the library. I'm going to create a couple of scenes for this. Scene 1 will be apple in this case, and scene 2 will be melon. So from my library, on scene 1, I can drag in an apple, like so. Maybe make it a bit bigger so it's more visible. And then I'll go to scene 2, which is now called melon. I'll bring in what is supposedly a melon. There we go. So if I test that, Control and Enter, you'll see it just flicks between the two. You might find it a bit painful on the eyes for a second, but I'll just show you that. You can see it on your screens. Right, if you look at the big screen, you'll see that, there we go. It flicks backwards and forwards, because all it does is it loops through the scenes. So the first thing I've got to do is tell it not to do that. And so in the timeline, I'm going to create a layer for my actions. Now you'll notice that this is only currently in the melon scene, because I can see the melon, but I'll do it in both of them, and I'll put a stop there. Simple. I'll just copy and paste that layer, in fact, into the other scene. And then it should just stop on the apple, like so. So what I need to do then is to have some text as a choice. I'll just do 2 choices with this one. I get the text tool, I'll put it in there, apple. The colour usually defaults to whatever I'd selected before, so I just need to change that to something a little bit brighter and bigger. Maybe a bit more friendly. Okay. Then I want to make this text clickable so that I can do something with it. So there needs to be a movie clip. Now you're kind of familiar with movie clips because you've created quite a few of them so far. So how do I create a movie clip? And how do I get to that point? Right click, convert to symbol, and I'll just call that Apple text, which could be a button, could be a movie clip. I'll just keep it as a movie clip for now. I'll paste another one of those in, just break it apart. Call it melon. And then I'll copy and paste these 2 things to the next layer, next scene, sorry, paste in place, put them where they were. Okay. Okay, so now I've got some text which is sort of legible. Maybe I'll give it a bit of a darker background. And you'll notice that it still highlights when I hover over it. What I want to do is to go inside the text field, or inside of the movie clip, and click on this thing here that says selectable to make it not selectable anymore. And I'll do the same with Apple. So select the text field, properties, turn off that selectable text, and then go back to the main timeline. Okay. So each one of these needs a name. So if I call that Apple underscore BTN, even though technically it's a movie clip, and the same with this one, Melon underscore BTN. And then what I need to do is to somehow figure out what is on screen. So if I go into my actions, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable. That's just a box that holds some information. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to hold the answer, which is something known as a string. It just means it's a string of characters, that's all. And they come between speech marks. So the answer is apple. Then I need to name both of my pieces of fruit, like so, and I will use their instance name to match the answer. So go back to scene. I'm going to need to create a function, a list of instructions. That function will be called checkAnswer. That should have also put in an additional bracket for me there. This is going to be related to something to do with a mouse. So I don't know if you've seen this before, but it's, we used a thing called mouse event in the video before. Scroll through that, press return. Notice how when I press return, it put this extra line in at the top for me as well. So all I'm going to do to start off with is to get it to tell me the name of what I've clicked. And so I can use something called trace. This just outputs some information into the output panel down here when we're testing things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace e.target, which relates to the thing that's being clicked, and then I'm going to ask it what its name is. And that should hopefully work once we've attached this to the movie clip. So remember that I gave it an instance name and I called it Apple. So I called it Apple. Now we're going to add an event listener. What I'm listening for is mouse event dot click, and then I'm going to tell it to run the function that I've just created. And let's see what it does. Okay, so you'll notice in the bottom window there, it told me Apple. So it's given me the name of the thing that I've clicked on. Then what I want to do is to check whether that matches the answer. So I can use something known as an if statement, which works a little bit like this. It's a bit like a function, except I'm saying if something is true, then do this. So if, and I created a variable called answer earlier on there. If that equals, and then I'll just try against the name first. I'm expecting this to be false. Then I will trace this out. Oh, and it works. So it's as simple as that. Once that's happened, rather than tracing out the answer, I can tell it to go to and stop, and then we tell it the frame and the scene. So there's only one frame in our melon scene, which needs to go through as a string. And there we go. So currently, if I click on that and its name's the same as the name, then that's fine. But what if I then change that to, rather than being click on the apple, to clicking on MC, I think I called it with a small letter, to be honest. Apple button even, copy that. So rather than me listening to click on the apple, I'm going to listen to clicking on the text. Cancel that for now, I'll save it later. So now when I click on that, nothing happens. And when I click on the apple, nothing happens either. So how am I going to get from the point where I'm checking an answer well, what I need to do is I need to give some information to that button. So what I'm going to say is answer underscore button dot, just give me a second here, val. Val is going to be short for value. So I'm going to have a value for that button. And this is just something I've made up. It's not, if I put in value, it goes blue, and I'm not allowed to do that. Shouldn't be using keywords as names. Equals apple. I'll just put space in there. So now I'm going to check the value of that answer button. So where it says e.target.name, what I need it to do is be e.target.val, and then hopefully that will equal the same thing. Oop. Underscore btn. Oh, it told me off. Right, okay. I'm going to have to change that to movie clip. Okay. So what I need to do now. Oh. Well, that would make sense, wouldn't it? So you see where I put answer button, what I meant was apple. Now everything should be okay. So I'm hoping that the value that I've created will feed through. So when I click on apple, we get something out of it. But we're not. And that's because I've told it to check its name and not its value in the if statement. So there we go. It's telling me something doesn't exist now, but I know that it's working. Sort of. Let's just break that apart. There we go. All right. So the little thing I did was I broke the text apart. It gave me an error. I don't know if you saw it, but at the bottom of the screen it was basically banging on about how I tried to add a property to a text field. It didn't like it, so I basically broke it into what is just a hand-drawn image. You can do that with text. It's quite useful in Flash. You can just break it apart like that. So the main thing is seeing that, okay, with a little bit of logic, you can then reuse that code. So there's only really about a dozen lines of code to create something much bigger. You know, say for instance a learner application where you have little quizzes involved. Yeah. So I just wanted to run through that. I'll output the video. By the time you've got to the end of the other video, you'll have that available. Okay.